Hi Isabella, this is Miss Beckner. I just thought it'd be easier to make a quick video for you answering your questions. I appreciate you reaching out. Anytime you want some of these questions answered, I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one. We could do this together in a live lesson, but I'm going to attempt to answer your questions in this format for you this time. So let's take a look. All right, so on question 1, you've graphed the equation in Desmos. So you've taken this equation and you've put it in Desmos. And you said you have found the intercept, but you are not exactly sure what f of 0, f of 1, and f of 2 mean. And you don't know how to finish the question. So notice how the equation is in the form of f of x. And you're asking what f of 0 is. So that means 0 is x. So where f of 0 is, what does it equal? So when x is 0, it's actually your y-intercept, okay? Another way to explain what these f of numbers are, f of x is just a fancy way of saying what is the y value for when the x value is that number in the parenthesis. Okay, so if you change this graph or this equation in Desmos, you click this little wheel right here, and you change this to a table, you can put in those numbers that are in those parentheses, your f of 0, your f of 1, your f of 2. All right, there we go. And it will tell you what the y values are when they're at those points. And it'll also put over here on the graph for you at those points. So that answers the first question that you have. And if you want additional support on that, always just check out your iExcel for that. Let me see if I can pull up an iExcel that I think would be perfect for that. Let me see here, iExcel. Let me sign in here. If you use your search bar up here in iExcel, you can search for topic, skills, and more. And for this topic or skill, we're going to say functions. And then let's look and see what comes up in functions. Add and subtract, multiply, linear functions, functions and relations. Let's try linear. Let's just look at function. Let's look at function notation. Let's see if there's something different that comes up for that. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing numbers, nuclear, add and subtract numbers written in scientific notation. Nope, that didn't work. Functions, let's look at functions and equations then. The first thing on the list there. All right, here is the highlighted ones that we have starred for you. Which x satisfies the equation, write variables. Let's see, that doesn't help. And kind of hover over that and it gives you some examples of what is in that skill and that's not looking like what we want. Let's see here. And getting closer. Let's see. No. Let's see. Let's scroll down some more. Okay, that's the direct variation. That's close. Let's see, does x, y subtract, relate the graph, slope, y, slope. I'm sorry, I am just point slope, find the slope, intercept, slope, intercept form, write equation. Go. That's what I'm looking for down here. All right, plug in the evaluate a function. These are the ones that you'll want to look at here. Evaluate function. So I would try M7 to get more practice on that one. All right, sorry it took me so long to look for that. All right, and then the next question you had was on number 9. Here we go. Number 9 said you wrote the equation for the first and second questions, but the first was correct. And you've been trying to rewrite it, but your attempts aren't correct and you cannot move forward in solving the other question. All right, so write the equation that represents the cost of Beak Mobile. So you are planning on signing a cell phone plan. Beak Mobile charges $40 per month with an additional one-time fee of $50. So I assume that you wrote here 40x plus 50, y equals 40x plus 50. And then the Horizon phone charges $30 a month with an additional fee of $100. So this one should be pretty similar, 30x plus 100. Okay, let x represent the number of months, let y represent the cost. So y equals 30x plus 100. The first one would be y equals 40x plus 50. And then part C says, in how many months do the cell phone plans cost the same? So you'd want to set those two equations equal to each other to figure that out. So let me get my pen. Here we go. And I'm going to show you how to set that up. So you have 40x plus 50 equals 30x plus 100. If you set them equal to each other, you're going to solve for x, and x would be the number of months that the plans would be equal. So you would find your answer for this. So solving that, I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides, 30x, and that's going to give me 10x plus 50, which is 100, and then you're going to subtract 50 from both sides. Why do my 5s always look like S's? I'm not sure. So that's going to leave you with 10x equals 50, and then divide by 10 on both sides. That's going to give you x equals 5, and that is the number of months you'll put in there. X is 5. All right, and let's see. The next one says D. What is the solution to the system of equations? Write this as an ordered pair. Okay, so the solution is if you take both of those equations, you put them in Desmos, where the point of intersection is, that would be your solution. We already found that 5 is where the number of months. So 5 is going to be your x value for the number of solutions. So x comma y is the point of intersection, and we already have the x value. So how are you going to find the y value? Well, you can either graph them both in Desmos, and that'll give you the point, or you can take the 5 and plug it into one of your equations. Your y, let's do the second one, equals 30x plus 100. Well, y would equal 30 times 5, because 5 is the point of intersection of the x value. So we're going to plug in what we know about x, and that's going to give you 150 plus 100. So y is going to equal 250. So what is the ordered pair? 5 and 250 is your ordered pair. And then let's see, E, get this pen going off and so I can scroll. What the solution means that in 5 months, the cost of the cell phone plans are both $250. Okay, and then you said on question 6, you correctly wrote both equations for the questions and graphed the equations on Desmos, but you can't find an answer for the last questions. You said it may be because the way the question is worded that you might not be understanding. So you need to answer the question, but you've solved the equations in multiple ways and can't get the answer to the question. Okay. So this is write an equation that represents Ben's wage. Let X represent the number of hours he worked and Y represent how much he earns. Okay. So for the equation, Ben works as a park ranger, makes $35 an hour. So you should have Y equals 35 times the number of hours. And his friend Steve works at a nature guide tour and makes $30 an hour and an additional $20 per tips per day. So Steve's equation is 30x plus 20. Okay, so that's the two equations there. Then part C says graph the systems in Desmos. All right, you said you did that. And D, the solution of the system of equations means that when they both work how many hours, they both make how many, what amount of dollars. So again, that is the same as this last question we just talked about. What is the value of the ordered pair of intersection? So where do those two lines intersect when you graph them? What is the x value and what is the y value? So your x value would go here, and then your y value would go on the other line. And the y value would go here. So let's go look at those in Desmos. We have 35x, 30x, and plus 20. So I'm going to go over to Desmos. I'm going to type in y equals 35x and y equals 30x plus 20. And then I need to find on here where these intersect. So I'm going to like zoom out so I can see the point of intersection is somewhere where? Somewhere up here, right? You know that if you type in 35x equals 30x plus 20, it's going to go down on your, let me go home here. It's going to go on your x-axis and it's going to tell you where the x is. Where x is 4 is where they are, where they meet. So I'm going to go up to 4 here and see where my y value intersects. So I know when x is 4, they're both going to meet. Keep climbing. It's way up here. See, that's why you need to know what the question is actually asking, because this takes some time to just scroll and scroll and scroll to find where the intersection is up here at 4. All right, where is that point? 4, 140. Another way you can use Desmos to figure this out is you can change this into a table and this into a table. You can put your 4 in on both of them, and since you know that 4 is going to be the answer, and 140 is going to be on both of those tables. So that's another way you can answer that. Let's see. Finding for both of those questions, in order to get more practice, you're going to want to go over to your iExcel and you're going to want to use solving systems of equations. I would do it by graphing. So let's go down here and find solving systems. Solving linear equations, solutions to the list. So we want systems, systems, systems. There we go. Systems of equations by graphing, systems of equations, word problems. Those two right there would be your best bet. And then maybe even this one, okay? To practice those standards. Your next question was on 10. So let's go down to number 10. You said you correctly solved all the questions except the question asking you to write the equation in slope-intercept form, and you've been having a hard time when writing equations in slope-intercept form. So the part is tricky for you, but with this question specifically, you want to find resources to help you get better at writing this. So let's talk about that for a second. Writing an equation in slope-intercept form, let's just talk about the wording. Slope-intercept form, okay? That's y equals mx plus b, where the slope is your m and your y-intercept, that's the y-intercept, is your b value. So you need a slope and you need the y-intercept in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So if you're given a graph, you can find the y-intercept and you can find the slope from the graph. If you're given up 2 points, you can find your slope. If you're given the line and the equation, you should be able to pull out the slope and the y-intercept. So let's look at this word problem. A group of hikers began an expedition with 360 pounds of food. All right, so 360 pounds of food was their starting point. Their starting point. I wanted to say that because that's another way of saying the initial value. And that is the y-intercept in most cases. The y-intercept. They plan to eat a total of 12 pounds of food per day. So they are going to have a constant rate of change, a constant rate of change. And that is the definition of a slope, a linear slope. So the constant rate of change, they're going to eat 12 pounds per day. So that means they're subtracting 12 pounds of food per day. So we want to let x represent the number of days and y represent the amount of food they have left. So if we were to write an equation in slope-intercept form, our y would equal our slope of negative 12 times x plus our y-intercept, our initial starting point of 360 pounds. So that would be our equation. Now you can put that into Desmos. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. I'm going to leave the wording on here. I'm going to put that into Desmos. Get rid of everything else that we've done here. Okay. Our equation is y equals negative 12x plus 360. All right. Now let's change that to a table of values. If I go back over here, I want 0, 5, 10, and 15 in my x column. So I'm just going to change those here, 5, 10, and 15, and I can delete this row. And it will automatically put in the values in my table for me that I can use to fill out your y values here. All right, so let's see. Write the equation in slope-intercept form. We just did that right here. And then in how many days will the hikers run out of food? So when will this equal, when will when will the y value become 0? So when will, I started at 360 and I'm going to go all the way down to 0. So when will my y value equal 0? So I'm going to plug in 0. Let's see if it'll do it backwards for me. No, it won't. Okay. So when will it equal 0? So take your 0 and put it in to your equation. Here we go. And solve for x. So when will it equal 0? Okay, so when y is 0, I'm going to subtract the 360. That's going to give me negative 12x. And then I'm going to divide by negative 12. So in how many days will that be? 360 divided by 12 is 30. So in 30 days, it will be that. All right, and that is your answers for this one. And then let's see what videos are going to help you write equations in slope-intercept form. Let's go look at IXL. Writing equations in slope-intercept form. Right here. Let's see, find the slope and the intercepts. Here is your standard form. Here's your standard form. Here's your slope-intercept form from a table. Slope-intercept form, writing an equation, given the slope in there. Here's from a graph. Here's from another, how to graph it from slope-intercept form. Here, there's several right here in your L's. So I hope this answers all of your questions. I'm sorry if this was a little long for you, but you had several questions and I just thought it was easier to make you a video instead of typing in all those answers. So have a great rest of the day. If you need anything, please let me know again.